Welcome to Branding the Beltway. I'm Stacey Piper, a 25-year government marketing expert and the host of the podcast that helps you level up your B2G marketing game with actionable insider tips and real-world case studies. If you're in the business of doing business with the government, you're in the right place. Each episode delivers straight-to-the-point strategies from senior marketing leaders familiar with navigating the unique world of GovCon. In each episode, we'll first explore that month's topic on a macro level, talking strategy with CXOs. Then we'll deep dive into the same topic on a micro level, examining the practical approach of development and implementation. We're talking brand awareness, content strategy, and the campaign tactics that actually move the needle. Whether you're a CXO, a growth strategist, or marketing practitioner looking to strengthen your federal position, Branding the Beltway is your essential resource for driving results and winning more contracts. Let's connect strategy to execution and position your brand to win. Hi, I'm Stacey Piper, the host of Branding the Beltway. Welcome to our April episode, The Hidden Work of M&A, Brand Strategy, Integration, and Market Trust. I'm here with Paul Frommelt, Vice President of Marketing and Communications at Integer Technologies. Integer Technologies transforms scientific research, engineering, and real-world application into predictive, mission-driven tools to accelerate decision advantage for defense and industry. Welcome, Paul.
Thanks for having me, Stacey. Appreciate being here.
Of course. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So I like to say I'm a journalist by trade. Went to school for journalism and started the first part of my career as a journalist. And as a lot of things happen with journalists, especially when there's some downturns like in 2008. And I actually jumped over to government contracting as a proposal writer. So again, it's kind of like, you know how to write. There's a lot of different avenues that you can take. So I worked proposal writing for a while until I was working on a proposal that required a brand communicator, a PR person. And so I put my resume in and we won that contract. And so I went on contract as a communicator in the intelligence agency. And that kind of kickstarted my career as a communicator, a marketer in this space. Ended up going back to corporate as a corporate communicator and a marketer, and have been working with companies, small, mid, large size companies in marketing and corporate communications for almost a decade now. And a lot of that is in the PE space, the private equity space. So I have a lot of experience in acquiring companies and being acquired. So that's why the topic of this conversation is great, because I do have a lot of experience in protecting a brand and shifting a brand and rebranding companies when it comes to M&A in the private equity space.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. And yeah, I mean, I thought I had some experience in this space until Brian introduced me to you. And I was like, okay, it's crazy, because you don't really, you don't study this kind of brand integration. It's really born out of necessity and kind of learning on the job.
It's a trial by fire. I call these acquisitions and exits cycles. So I've been through a few cycles where I start at a smaller company and then M&A and build up and rebranding and packaging a platform. And then there's an exit where that platform is sold. And I've been through a few cycles. And it was that first cycle where it was kind of a trial by fire. You're learning what works on the fly. And then each time you do it, you grab another little piece of wisdom, especially on the internal side, on what you should do, what you shouldn't do. And you're learning by doing.
Absolutely. I like that notion of grabbing little pieces of wisdom, because that's why we have you on today. So we can, get some of the benefit of that experience and wisdom. And so a reminder to our audience, the first half of this podcast, we will examine this topic from the strategic lens, as if Paul is advising his exec leadership team or another exec leadership team. And then when we come back from break, we will look at this from a more operational, tactical level. And Paul will give an insider's view on how marketing leaders and marketing teams can really raise the bar on this. So we'll hop right in. Paul, when organizations pursue a merger or acquisition, I feel like brand strategy is often an afterthought. In your view, how should leaders think about brand as a strategic asset during the transaction?
Yeah, I mean, it obviously brand should never be an afterthought, and it should be something that is considered during the early stages of considering acquiring a company. Even smaller companies with smaller brands, their brand position means something. It may mean that just understanding that it isn't very strong, or it's a negative, their brand position. So that informs what you do next when you acquire the company. You can more quickly merge brands or retire the old brand. But just understanding that even with companies with stronger brands, or you don't think they're strong, but then you dive into it, you see, well, their brand position is the reason why they get XYZ employees. Even if it's a smaller and not nationally known brand, in their regional market with their customer base, it's very, very strong. And you might not realize that until you dive into it. So I always recommend very early on in the process to do that brand audit, that communications audit of a company. It doesn't mean that you're not going to acquire a company because something you found in a brand audit, but you're more prepared to deal with what comes next when you work to integrate that company. Again, you may not understand just knowing the company, what the brand is, or even why brand positioning is important. But it's what what their customers think of them. It's what their potential employees think of them. It's what their current employees think of them. And understanding all of that and understanding the strength of a brand really helps dictate what you do next. And some of the questions we're going to talk about next this sets the base for what you do.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think brand equity, I mean, it can, if it's really strong, it can even affect valuation and price. But like you said, it really just kind of paying attention to it at the beginning of the process and not waiting till the end, it can make all the difference in how smoothly everything goes as well.
Yeah, and think about, like, if it's more of a merger of equals, even though there is an acquiring company, there needs to be early discussion on what brand do we go forward with? Now, a lot of times they're going to default to the acquiring company, but you need to think about, hey, would it make sense to take this acquired company's brand as our own? We think it's stronger in this area, or where we want to be. This is an aspirational acquisition, and we're radically changing the shape of the company. And we think this brand, because we've done our due diligence, is better to move forward. Or you decide, no, you don't need that brand. Or you decide, hey, we need to rebrand completely. We need to make it a brand new entity. So there's a lot that goes into it, and making the wrong decision, and I've seen this, making the wrong decision really puts you on your back foot. And it's from folks that don't understand the value of brand equity. They're building brand equity in everything they do, but they don't understand they've built this bank of equity, and they might just throw it away.
Absolutely. No, I love that. And I love I've viscerally felt what you said puts them on their back foot, because it really can do that. And it can cost the company a lot of money, because this stuff, rebranding is not inexpensive.
Yeah.
And if you rebrand once and then you have to rebrand again because the market didn't hear it correctly, et cetera, it can be really costly. So, Paul, every acquisition comes with its own identity, every company, right? It's name recognition, brand reputation, and even their positioning. From a leadership standpoint, how do you suggest leaders determine what elements of the acquired brand are worth preserving or extending to the parent brand? And what affects how quickly or slowly the brand integration should happen.
Yeah, and so what I would always recommend, and this is kind of my starting place, and there's a lot of factors that can change this. But my starting place is you want to get to a single brand as quickly as possible. So whether it is, again, whether you are retiring the acquired company's brand, you're creating a brand new brand identity for the company, or you're keeping the brand, you decide you want to keep the acquired company's brand in some shape or form. I want to get to that endpoint as quickly as possible. Part of that is just me wanting to make sure get this done, get it done correctly, and move on to the work of branding the whole enterprise. However, there's a lot of factors that change the pace of that. One of it is how strong the company's brand is. One of it is how internally how much employees care about that brand. And in some cases, in some companies, that brand, they have it tattooed on their body. They love the company they work for. So you need to be very careful about how slowly you change that company's brand or you retire that company's brand. Externally, how much the customer knows them by their brand. Do they know them by their people? Do they know them by their products? Do they know them by that brand? So understanding all of that gives you to how quickly you want to get there. Like I said, in most cases, I want to get to a single brand and then move forward, branding that whole organization. In some cases, that's just not the correct call, and you need to understand that, where there is something like there's dual branding for a while, but then there might be the end state may be acquired company, comma, a XYZ company. So essentially it is a sub brand in perpetuity, which is fine, and that is there's reasons for that. If they're a very specialized area, or they have a very specialized customer, or maybe they do some commercial work and not defense industry work, and the commercial industry knows them. So there's all these different factors. And again, my starting place is let's get to one brand very, very quickly. But I need to understand that might not be the best call. And hopefully you've done your due diligence, you did an audit, and you understand that before closing. But sometimes plans change. You get in there and employees feel a real certain way about that brand. So you want to take it more slowly, because you don't want to strip that brand from them, because then you're going to get less engagement from the employees and you're going to see a lot of turnover.
Absolutely. No, and that's a good reminder. There was one company that we acquired where they were employee owned, they were ESOP. Mm-hmm. And it changed everything on how you approach all the integration elements, not just brand even, right? Yeah. But that's really great. And very often we did like a transition brand for a period of time, yeah, and then back to the parent brand. But
ultimately, it's better for everybody. It's better for the health of the company if there is a single, solid, very healthy brand. Because then the marketing team, the great marketing team, is able to put all their energy into marketing that brand, to boosting that brand. And there's budgets involved, spending all the budget on that single brand. And then a healthy brand it helps the company in so many different ways, ultimately helping the employees. But they're not going to see that. In some cases, in a lot of cases, this is their first time being acquired. So they don't know what to expect. They don't know you're taking away the company name. You're taking away our entire identity. So you just got to take it slow, but ultimately it's in the best, it's best for everybody to get to that end state, whether it's likely a solid brand or multiple brands or sub brands within the parent company. It's just best to get there.
Absolutely. So along those lines, one of the hardest narratives to communicate has always been that 1 + 1 is 3 story. What advice would you give CXOs about clearly articulating the value add to customers, employees, partners, and the market?
This is marketing 101 before we even get to integration or M&A. What's in it for the audience? Why should your audience care about what you're saying? So immediately you need to understand why employees benefit from this merger, why customers benefit from this merger. And it should not be because we're going to make more money. It should not be because we understand these financial synergies. That's an awful word to be saying around an M&A. So you need to think, okay, so why is it important? Let's start with employees. Again, they say they were at a sub 100 person company, very family-like atmosphere. Everybody felt a strong feeling towards that brand. And then for certain reasons, likely it's best for the company. They agree to be acquired by another company. Maybe it's a much larger company. Maybe it's another mid-sized company or small company. You need to be able to tell them quickly and from leadership why this is good for them, and it needs to be true. You can't just make up BS. So in most cases, you want them to know that, hey, there's so much more opportunity now, or a healthy company means you have more opportunities, and this is how we get to the healthiest company. Hey, did you want to move to the West Coast? Well, now we have West Coast offices, and now you have more opportunity to move there. Were you interested in branching out to use your experience in a different way? Well, now at a larger company, you can do something different without leaving a company, because in most cases, employees that kind of get tired and they've done the same thing for a couple of years, they want to do something different. At small companies, that likely means they're leaving the company, and then it's leaving the company and stepping into something unknown, and new 401k, new benefits. Well, a larger company, a company that just had an integration, maybe you can stay at the company and still get a fully rounded career. You can stay at that one company your whole career and do a lot of different things. So that's explaining to the employees, this is why it's important. This is why it matters to you. You don't care about making more money. You don't care about the company. Obviously, you care about you making more money. You don't care about the company making more money. You don't care that the company, by joining together, they found all these synergies and it's going to be great. You care about why it matters. For customers, how we can better serve you. So say the customer is very, very happy. You do a very niche thing for the customer. They love everything that you do, or you provide this certain tool or technology to the customer. First thing you say is, well, that's not changing. We have, but now you can tell them, hey, now we have a whole different tool set or a whole different thing that we could add to it. There was a hole in our capabilities, and now we can give you something different. I know you weren't asking for it, but think about how we could do it this way. Or, hey, now we have a lot more scale. So we're producing this product for you, this hardware for you, and we could do it this quickly. Now we can do it twice as quickly. We can give you more. We're more efficient in how we do things. So those are some of the things you can tell the customers. But just back to the original question, understand what they care about it, what's in it for me, and then communicate that to them truthfully.
Absolutely. No, that's so true. And for employees, that whole strength of infrastructure and additional opportunity. I mean, right. I think you and I talked about this when we first met. I stayed at a company that grew by acquisition for 17 years because there was always more opportunity, and it was exciting and dynamic, and we were growing. And so there was limitless opportunity for the people who had ambition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just to hit it again, it's a healthy company, a company that's financially stable, that helps everybody. So a company, and if the best way to be financially stable or to grow to how they want to is to be acquired or is to merge with another company, it's ultimately beneficial to employees to be at a strong, healthy company where there's a lot of opportunities. You don't want companies that, they have one customer, they have one big contract, and they're always in the precipice of, if they lose that contract, they don't have anything else, So having a company that's more diversified, healthy, financially healthy, it's just more beneficial to employees, even if they don't see it initially. It is more beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I know 2025 was a really tough year for a lot of government contractors, and there were a lot of transactions because of it. And there were a lot of companies that just closed their doors. So that diversity and opportunity is really critical.
Absolutely.
So earlier we talked about that kind of the employee mentality and really just understanding how the employees' viewpoint of the brand and their kind of level of commitment to the brand, having it tattooed on their body. Um, Really, I wanted to talk about company culture. And I find that that often drives whether a brand integration truly succeeds. How have you seen executive teams successfully navigate this?
Yeah, so this is interesting because in most cases, and I've had the opportunity to work for many very great small companies with great cultures, and I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of them through the M&A work that I've done. And in most cases, a company that gets to the point where they are acquired, where they've grown, they've been successful enough to be acquired by another company, they have a good culture. They have a good company overall to be successful, but they have a good culture. And it helps if you're a smaller company and your leadership cares and you have a culture that cares about the employees. You're not unique for having a good culture. And a lot of companies say, well, our culture is XYZ. We care about our employees and our benefits are good. And we go to baseball games in the summer and we have summer picnics and our holiday party is the best holiday party. Yeah, a lot of companies have that. It doesn't make you unique to have a good culture. But what I tell leadership is the biggest mistake you can make is trying to create a monoculture. So say you are an East Coast company and you have all of these benefits, you have special benefits, you go to the baseball games, all of that, and you acquire a company, say in San Diego. Now, geographically, it's different, but also they may have certain traditions that they love to do, or they may have certain unique benefits, or they have a surfing club or something, something different that's unique. Don't try to pull anybody into one single culture. Understand what each area of your business does and keep those traditions. There's a messaging fault that I've seen quite a bit where it's we're going to be one company. We're all together in this. We're all working. We're one company, one culture. And acquired employees sometimes push back against that. It's like, well, I want to continue to do what I've been doing. So it's important to recognize why these cultures are working. It's important to try to scale some of these things, take best practices from each company, but don't try to push everybody into a monoculture because you're going to get pushback.
I like that. And I've never heard it put that way. So I'm glad that you shared that. Monoculture is going to stay part of my language.
Yeah.
Um, so before we take a quick break, I wanted to end on that notion of budget and resource allocation. You touched on it earlier. We talked about how expensive, a brand integration can be, and that's certainly on the back of an even more expensive transaction.
Yeah.
So, how should CXOs be thinking of allocating the marketing budget to get the most out of the transaction and have the best chances of making that really impactful from an ROI perspective?
Yeah, so clearly when you're looking at acquiring a company and you're looking at all the integration expenses, you absolutely need to budget for the marketing expenses. It just needs to be table stakes. It needs to be, that there's hey, we need this legal budget. We're going to get a bunch of hours from these high-priced lawyers, and we need to set aside this money. And they understand that. They need to understand also that it's quite a bit of money from the marketing side to do it correctly. You're looking at brand new websites. You're looking at replacing exterior signage, which is not cheap. Interior signage is not cheap. Completely redoing slick sheets and all of that. It is extremely expensive to go through a rebrand or an integration, and it needs to be separate from the general operating marketing budget. It's just something that you need to understand. And there are all these ways. There's the cost of integration is in a separate bucket, and it's done differently. And I'm not a finance person, but I know that there's special budgets for integration. It just needs to be in there, and it needs to be healthy as well. Because if you want to do it right, I'm not saying that, marketing, you need to give us all the money, but you need to set aside the correct amount of money to make sure we do it correctly. There are a lot of things that marketing can do on very low budgets. At smaller companies, in general operating, we can do so many things organically. With great strategy, we can get the message across without spending too much money. You just need to spend money in integration, so you have to have that set aside.
That's a good reminder, because, right, you've already put so much money in that failing to do the brand integration correctly could cost you more than just what you didn't spend on marketing.
Yeah, I mean, there's, first of all, like I said, it cannot come out of the operational budget. That is already, accounted for. But you have things like, look at the tech stack for the marketing, look at just general rebranding. And in most cases, and I've seen this throughout, you need outside support. You need agency support for some of this stuff. You have, especially in the DC area, you have fantastic agencies that do this all the time, that have such, talented graphic designers, and they know what they're doing. In most cases, to do it correctly, you do need to get outside support.
I love that. And, not just because I'm an agency, but also I find that sometimes it's like an objective third party too. Like, they can see it without a slant either way toward either brand. And sometimes that's much needed when you go through those conversations.
You need that mercenary attitude. You really do. You need someone that will make the right call without any emotional baggage. And I try to be like that. I honestly do, but it's hard when I'm working at a company, and I care about the people, and I wear the polos. I care about that. But at some point, the right call needs to be made, not the call. It needs to be made with your head, not your heart. And agencies are able to do that well.
Absolutely. All right, Paul, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about this from the tactical, practical lens.
This episode of Branding the Beltway is brought to you by Piper Strategies and Orange Slices. Piper Strategies, marketing that moves the needle. Piper Strategies is a full-service creative agency for leaders serious about growth. We decode the complex, translating mission-driven work into clear, compelling narratives. Our clients expand their reach, communicate with impact, and earn trust in competitive markets so they can win more work. We don't just deliver results, we build your internal marketing muscle. With Piper Strategies, clients grow with us until they outgrow us. It's a partnership-first, un-agency approach that not only gets you noticed and builds credibility, but also scales your brand and your team. Learn more at piperstrategies.com. Orange Slices, fresh intelligence for B2G success. Cut through the noise with Orange Slices, a trusted source for public sector insights, teaming opportunities, and procurement intel. With a playful name and a powerful platform, they're serious about making data accessible and usable so the entire GovCon community can thrive. For resources, visit orangeslices.ai.
Welcome back to Branding the Beltway. I'm your host, Stacey Piper, and we are talking with Paul Frommelt from Integer Technologies about M&A, brand strategy, integration, and market trust. Paul, welcome back.
Thanks.
So now our audience, we're thinking maybe the CXOs have dropped the podcast by now, and we still have our government marketers on. And so I wanted to get down to brass tacks. When the deal closes and the marketing team takes the baton, what are the first practical steps they need to take to audit and inventory content, messaging, the MarTech stack, all of that?
Yes, thank goodness we got those leadership people out of here, so we can talk business here. No, so the first thing is for me, and hopefully a little of this was done but before closing, but in some cases you can't really do much legally before closing, but hopefully you've thought about it a little bit before closing. It's the people. It is absolutely, obviously people say this, but it's true. The most valuable resource is the people. So hopefully you're acquiring a company or you're on a company that's being acquired that has marketing support as well. In some cases, that's not true. These smaller companies, it's changing, but definitely 10, 15 years ago, smaller companies, even companies with as many as like 1,000 people just did not have dedicated marketing support. And we're seeing that is different now. They have at least one person that's focused on marketing. But hopefully you're bringing on more people, and then, or in the large scale, two large companies, and you have dozens of people on both sides. You need to understand quickly how you can merge those teams. How can you merge those teams, and how can you get them rowing in the right direction immediately? Because the marketing needs to be integrated and all on the same page before anything else can happen in terms of branding and communicating this integrated brand. So you got to understand the people. And I've been very lucky that there have been no synergies when we're merged in my career when we're merging. There's some leaders of different parts of marketing that may have to, someone else may take over or whatever, just based on dynamics of the teams. But we didn't have to let people go because of an acquisition, because the people are so important. So understanding where everybody slots in, understanding what that organization should look like. Maybe when you had a smaller, leaner team, you organize differently. Now with more and more people, you can get to a better end state of your marketing team. So that's first thing, understanding that, getting your people where they need to be to best use their capabilities, all rowing in the same direction. And then what I like to think about, the tech stack, like, do we use HubSpot or do you use this? That will all shake out. That doesn't bother me as much as understanding the people and then understanding the channels and content. So I always, when I get to a new company or we get into an integration, what are the health of the channels, internal and external channels, your social media channels, your website, internally, do you have an intranet, do you use Teams, do you use Slack, all of that stuff, understanding the health of those channels and how quickly we're going to integrate those channels is the next part. And then it's the content. What content do you produce? Who produces that content? And then once you have all your people together, you understand the health of the channels, maybe you've integrated the channels, and now you start pumping out content through those channels with those people, and then you start really going.
Absolutely. And I love that you start with the people, because I know that was one of the few ways we were able to grow our in-house marketing team over the years, was through whatever talent we acquired.
In most cycles that I say, in most cycles, I never hired a person. I was lucky enough through acquisition to have great people. And the interesting thing about these people is they're Swiss Army knives. If you are the sole marketing person at a small to medium sized government contracting company, you can do everything. So I'm grabbing all these really talented Swiss Army knives, and it's extremely beneficial.
That's great. So it sounds like brand integration touches everything, from websites and social media to proposals and sales decks and exhibit materials. And I think you even mentioned like building decor and signage.
Mm-hmm.
How should marketing teams prioritize what gets updated first? Thinking both internal audience and external audience, and what are some things that could affect how quickly or slowly these things should happen?
Yeah, so what you want to do is you want to focus on things that are legally necessary and things that help with customer visibility. So some things like, legal disclaimers and making sure those are updated, or high traffic websites for press releases, sales decks. Those should all, depending on how quickly you're fully integrating, those should always be focused on quickly. And then the next kind of tier down is you're looking at the social media handles. I talk about the channels. You're looking at social media channels, how quickly you want to integrate those, secondary marketing collateral, digital advertising. That's kind of like the first like 100 days type thing. Again, that changes based on the friction points. But really, you want to take care of the things that are kind of legally necessary, or things that the customer is seeing, templates for proposals and stuff like that. Direct touch with customers, legal documents. That's the first thing. And then it's really depending on what the timeline is that you're working through, handling the rest of that stuff. And you got, and then there's like the longer term. That's the physical signage, because that's usually a long pole in the tent. Is that physical signage takes so long? Maybe you need permits to get that done on buildings. You need to work with the building owner. So that's very longer term stuff. But that physical signage and some of the legacy content is kind of that last tier.
Okay, good. That makes sense. And I think sometimes even, right, you might be waiting for like leases on office space to expire or sublease out, so you can even merge some office space in key cities. So that makes sense to hold that till the final tier.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've talked a little bit about kind of this narrative and the storytelling, and I've found that messaging is often delicate in the early stages post-transaction. So how have you found ways to strike the right balance between honoring the acquired brand's differentiators while also transferring any brand value to the parent company?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mentioned earlier that it's likely a company that has grown to the point of being desirable to being acquired by an industry partner. They're doing things right. They have a stronger brand. So you really need to understand those key differentiators and what makes that brand strong, and don't lose it. Even if you're merging or you're retiring that company's brand, you need to first understand how you can take those strong differentiators, that brand, and move it to the parent company before you completely retire the brand. So that usually requires some dual branding moving forward. Both companies continuing with their brand identity for a certain amount of time, and it changes based on a number of factors, and a lot of it's just feel. And then there is the part where the company becomes a sub brand for a little bit. At that point, that's when the real work happens to try to take some of those differentiators or that positive brand equity that the acquired company has and try to transition that to the parent company before you take away that brand completely, if that's the way you want to do it. So in a lot of cases, what you want to do is always make sure the work you're doing is additive. So you are adding to the parent company's brand. You're not replacing things from the parent company's brand. You're adding things to it. So that's super important, I think, in terms of messaging is, okay, you have the foundation of the parent company's brand. What can you bolt onto it in the messaging that gets that additional brand differentiators from the acquired company onto you? And then you have to be successful before you can take away the other brand.
Absolutely. I love the notion of being additive, and it kind of goes back to that whole story that you tell internally and externally about the 1 + 1 is 3.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
In your experience, if the acquired firm is especially niche or, only really leads with one product or only works for one agency or works in a totally different sector, like you mentioned earlier, what are some of the best ways to bring them into a larger, more diverse set of offerings without them feeling minimalized or overlooked?
It's a very hard problem. And it's a very hard internal communications problem where say you have one company that is, a smaller government contractor that does one thing. It does a niche thing. And that is the entirety of what they do. So every time they're talking about the company prior to acquisition, they're talking about what, the employees are doing. Hey, you're doing a great job at XYZ because that is our business and you are helping us succeed. Say that capability, once it gets acquired by a larger parent company, and they're acquired for a reason, but is now maybe 10% of the company instead of 100% of the company. And maybe it's not a top 3 priority for the company. It's very important, but like say the company is doing a year-end all hands and they're mentioning, here's our priorities for the next 3 years. And that acquired company is not on that list, even though they are very, very important. All of a sudden they're not a top 3 priority. And then they start thinking about jumping ship and thinking about, well, they don't care about us, or we're the redheaded stepchild. And you need to be very careful. Now, these are all facts. You come from a company that what you do, say I'm an employee and I'm working at this company and I'm building this widget, and this widget is the company. I am a rock star. I am making 100% of the profit for the company because I'm building this widget and that's what the company is. All of a sudden I get acquired by another company and I'm still doing the exact same thing, doing a great job. The customer loves the widget that I'm building, but that widget is accounting for 5% of what the company does. So it is incumbent on the parent company to make sure that I still feel valued. So it's making sure that, okay, maybe the messaging from the larger parent company in the all hands that all employees see, maybe I don't get a spotlight, but maybe there's a division all hands where I'm certainly there's a spotlight on me. It's just making me feel valuable. And that's an important internal communications. Now, externally, the concern is the customer that loves those widgets sees me get acquired, sees that company get acquired, and they go to the website of the new company and I don't see the widget on there. And they're like, whoa, hey, wait a minute. Like, are you stopping building the widgets that I love? Should I not give you a follow-on contract because you don't do this work? So that goes back to how quickly you integrate things like high traffic websites, is making sure that the company sees that widget as well. So again, there is a reason that the widget making company was acquired by the parent company. But it may be that is now, the number 7 priority of the parent company. Still a priority, still super important enough to acquire the company. But you need to make sure that the employees that build those widgets and the customer that loves that widgets still feel the love. So it's a strategic priority for the company, but marketing wise, you need to make sure that everybody's feeling that love. That was a long answer, but I think I got there.
No, it's true. And I've been parts of acquisitions where the acquired company was definitely challenged when they felt the homepage, for instance, of the website didn't represent their client base.
Yeah.
And wouldn't speak to their client base because they were used to kind of doing one service, one solution.
Employees or project leaders on something will count the clicks. It takes 6 clicks to get to my part of the website. When I used to be on the homepage, my customer goes to www.parentcompany.com and they, for 15 seconds, look and they don't see us. And that's a problem. Or a new potential customer, we're trying to sell our widget and they go to the website, they don't see us. What can you do about this? I am losing business. In most cases, when you get to the point where someone is telling marketing they are losing business because of what marketing is doing, then that's when you have to stand up and go, hey, what's the solution? How do we fix this?
Yeah.
You don't want to be that. You don't want to be in that position.
No, not at all. So to wrap up, I wanted to talk. We touched on this a little bit when we talked about combining the marketing talent and the people as the first step. But presumably you and your marketing team at parent company were already working at full capacity.
Yeah.
Um, and I know you mentioned bringing on agencies in the past. So I wanted to know if you had any more specific advice for in-house marketers, especially those with lean teams, on how to get the work done, which parts to outsource specifically, et cetera.
Yeah. So it's a obviously, if you're working at capacity, you have your marketing team doing day-to-day operational work 100% of the time. Focusing on integration is another 100%. It's another 40 hours. So now you're at 80 hours. So in a lot of cases, there may be benefit to the fact that if you are merging two teams, you shave off a few people to solely focus on the integration duties. Usually a high level person, say the marketing leader at the acquired company, they are going to, for the next 6 to 12 to 18 months, really focus on making sure integration goes well. That's one thing, but you do need outside help. Now, overall, going beyond just marketing, there are agencies or there are vendors that help organize integrations, because marketing is, I believe, a very, very important part of integrations, but there's so many other places that get touched by integration. So you have a overall vendor that is running the integration, and that's all they're doing. That's the first thing. Second thing on the marketing side is, yes, you need in most cases it's the doers. You need someone in there and just working on the things that need to get done. Hopefully the internal marketing team is still setting the strategy and they're still kind of having the overarching view of what's happening, but you need an agency to help with a lot of the day-to-day. I think that the tactical lift and shift stuff that needs to get done, I think it's super, super important. And then like I mentioned, there's a lot of agencies, especially in DC area, that are specifically focused on GovCon, and they know they've been around the block. So having them as kind of a consultant, but B, they have very specialized help. A lot of times, the professional videographers or the professional graphic designers, a lot of times, if you're lucky, you have that in-house, but a lot of times you need to go external for stuff like that. So that real specialized support, you should bring on more help, because again, if you need to work 80 hours in a week when you usually work 40, something's got to give. And a lot of times you just got to get that outside help.
Absolutely. No, and that's really good for both driving the integration tasks forward, like a commander to help with that, so everyone else can drive their functions forward. But the specialized help, I know I used to bring on writers all the time.
Yeah.
Because of that messaging nuance and having to rewrite into a new brand voice or something like that was always really important too.
Well, likely let's just say I'm at the parent company, and we're acquiring another company, a big enough acquisition where there needs to be kind of a top-down rework of, say, the website. We're bringing on, we're doubling the capabilities that we talk about. It is a large-scale integration. And I look at, maybe I wrote all the words on the parent company's website, and now there's a different set of content from the acquired companies. It's probably better to get an impartial third party to look at how you can merge that messaging versus me, where I'm like, well, this is how I write. I wrote all of this, so I'm going to try to bolt that on, where maybe it's better to kind of take a different path, a third path into integrating both those brands.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Paul, I really appreciate it. Before we sign off, is there anything more that I didn't ask, a final word of wisdom or reiterating a key point that you want to make sure everyone keeps in mind?
I think it's a general marketing, but it goes into the M&A and integration, is GovCon marketing or B2G marketing is just a little different, because I always say we're not selling iPhones, but everything that we do, I call it the runway. So everything we do to build up the brand, it gives a runway for the business development and sales teams, because if you're selling to a customer or you're writing a proposal to a customer, a company with a stronger brand, you already have a little bit of a head start. You have that runway to take off. Same thing with recruiting. If your company brand is strong, it's easier to recruit. It also goes for retention. Recruiting and retention are kind of the two sides of the same coin. So you need to take that also into integration, into M&A. Marketing is super, super important. And maybe it's hard to measure the ROI. Maybe it's hard to measure the ROI of a successful brand integration. There are ways, but it's a little harder than a traditional B2C company. But you do need to understand that a good brand, a solid brand, a brand with a lot of built-in equity, it just makes every other part of what you're doing easier. So you should always look at, for marketing, strong marketing teams, strong marketing budgets, leadership understanding that marketing is important, even if they have a hard time actually measuring it. They should really focus on that, especially if they're in the case of M&A and looking to build platforms.
Absolutely. Paul, I think that's a great final word of wisdom. And I'm so glad that everyone listening has the benefit of learning from your years and years of going through these cycles. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This is a great time.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Branding the Beltway. If you're looking for an outsourced marketing partner or fractional marketing leadership who truly gets the GovCon sector, Piper Strategies is the team to know. We're not just here to deliver, we're here to empower. For resources or to inquire, visit piperstrategies.com.